We are recording.
Welcome to the Statewide Distance Learning Project Grant Competition webinar. The contents of this webinar complement but do not replace the request for grant application guidelines. Interested applicants should also carefully read the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines for program year 2018-19 and Division of Adult Education Policies on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage before deciding to submit an application. The guidelines have already been posted. The policies will be posted shortly. This webinar will be recorded and posted on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage. We will not answer questions during this webinar. We will provide information at the end on how to submit questions. This webinar will provide information on the grant application, review, and award processes. We will provide a general overview of the required and allowable activities and other requirements for grantees. Finally, we will provide suggested resources and grant tips. Here are some key dates related to this grant. On February 17th, 2018, a notice of availability of grant funds was posted in the Pennsylvania Bulletin. Posting in the Bulletin allows us to reach the greatest number of potential applicants. PDE posted the request for grant application guidelines for the Statewide Distance Learning Project grant to the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage this past Friday, February 23rd. The grants competition webpage also contains several resource documents and links to the Pennsylvania WIOA Combined State Plan and regional and local workforce plans. We are now holding the webinar today, February 27th. The grant applications will be available in eGrants on Wednesday, February 28th. If you log into eGrants before that date, you will not see the grant listed. We have posted PDFs of the grant content on the grant competitions webpage for your reference. However, the grant applications will be submitted via the eGrant system. The deadline for applicants to complete the grant application is April 3rd, 2018 at 2 p.m. Please note the 2 p.m. deadline. The Federal Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, Title II of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, provides funds to be awarded through the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Bureau of Post-Secondary and Adult Education, Division of Adult Education, to provide adult basic education services throughout the state. PDE is making available up to $400,000 of these funds, $400,000 of these funds to support one distance learning direct service program to provide adult basic education services at a distance to Pennsylvania residents as directed by the division. PDE has elected to support a program dedicated to providing adult basic education at a distance to meet the needs of residents who are unable to access face-to-face instruction in their areas of need. The Technical Assistance Guide for Performance Accountability under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act defines distance education as a formal learning activity where students and instructors are separated by geography, time, or both for the majority of the instructional period. Distance learning materials are delivered through a variety of media, including, but not limited to, print, audio recording, videotape, broadcasts, computer software, web-based programs, and other online technology. Teachers support distance learners through communication via mail, telephone, email, or online technologies and software. The successful applicant for the grant funding opportunity for the statewide distance learning project must provide all of the following services at a distance through a variety of media: adult basic education, ABE, adult secondary education, ASE, and high school equivalency, HSE, test preparation instruction to individuals who are unable to attend face-to-face instruction at a local program. English as a second language, ESL instruction, to individuals who are unable to attend face-to-face instruction at a local program. High school level math instruction, which refers to level E of the College and Career Readiness Standards for Adult Education in mathematics, to supplement math instruction at local programs. Support services to help students persist in distance education. Support services to help students identify education and career goals, develop employability skills, and successfully transition to post-secondary education or training and/or employment as appropriate. And integration of workforce preparation activities into instruction and support services. Workforce preparation activities are designed to help students develop critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, digital literacy skills, and self-management skills, including competencies in using information and resources, working with others, and understanding systems. The successful applicant for the distance learning grant will not be required to serve as a partner in a local PA CareerLink site. However, it should ensure that it is providing career services to program participants. An eligible applicant must have demonstrated effectiveness in providing adult basic and literacy activities and helping students achieve the listed outcomes. Adult basic and literacy activities are academic instruction below the post-secondary level that increase students' ability to read, write, and speak in English and perform mathematics. Applicants must provide quantitative data related to their provision of adult basic and literacy activities and student outcomes for the immediate preceding 3 program years. In other words, applicants must have provided adult basic education services for at least the last 3 years. The services do not have to have been provided with division funds, however. Applicants must provide data that demonstrate the applicant's success in helping students achieve the following outcomes: improve skills in mathematics, reading, writing, and/or English language proficiency, earn a high school equivalency credential, get a job, retain a job, and enter post-secondary education or training. The data must include the number of individuals in each cohort, the number of those individuals who successfully achieved the outcome, and the resulting outcome. Applicants will also have to provide an explanation of the criteria used to assign individuals to each cohort and to determine achievement of the outcome, as well as how the data were collected. Entities that are not able to provide the data needed for demonstrated effectiveness are not eligible providers and will not be able to receive grant funds. Refer to the request for grant applications for a list of eligible applicants. A consortium or coalition of eligible applicants may apply for the grant. For the purposes of this competition, a consortium or coalition of agencies is defined as a main grantee with 1 or more subgrantees. The main grantee will serve as both the fiscal agent for the grant and as a provider of some of the services proposed in the grant application. The main grantee is responsible for ensuring that all activities provided are completed as proposed and is responsible for monitoring and compliance of the subgrantees. Answers in the grant application should reflect the work of the consortium or coalition as a whole, rather than treat each entity separately. Refer to section 205.4 of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines for more information about the responsibilities of the main grantee in a consortium or coalition. Participants in the Distance Learning Project services cannot be enrolled or be required to be enrolled in secondary education. All participants must demonstrate a need for basic skills development based on the results of one of the approved standardized assessments administered before instruction starts. Participants must be at least 16 years old. Please note that in Pennsylvania, the compulsory school age is 17. Therefore, 16-year-olds are generally required to be enrolled in school. Programs must have evidence that any 16-year-olds in the program are not required to be enrolled in secondary education. In awarding funds, PDE will prioritize funding through the review and rating process to grant applications from eligible providers with past effectiveness in providing high-quality services that improve the skills of eligible participants and help those participants to earn high school equivalency credentials, gain and retain employment, and/or transition to post-secondary education or training. Further, PDE will prioritize funding through the review and rating process, grant applications that demonstrate a thorough and detailed plan for providing the required services, evidence of the applicant's organizational capacity to meet all of the programmatic, reporting, administrative, and fiscal requirements of the grant, a variety of instructional options to meet the needs of students, high-quality instruction that is based on best practices and the college and career readiness standards for adult education, and is of sufficient intensity to lead to student outcomes. High-quality student support services that help students to persist and succeed in adult basic education services and meet their personal, educational, and career goals, and services that align with the strategies and goals of the Pennsylvania WIOA Combined State Plan. Applicants must demonstrate that they have the required staffing and that the staff members of the Distance Learning Project are well-trained and meet the minimum requirements established by PDE. Refer to the program guidelines, section 204 and subsections 204.1 to 204.7 for details. Those sections are in the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines. The program administrator, coordinators, instructional staff, and student support staff must have at least a bachelor's degree. All programs are required to have a data quality specialist. The data quality specialist is not simply a clerical position doing data entry. This person is responsible for the accuracy and quality of the data reported to the Division of Adult Education. As a result, the division has established minimum requirements for this role. The person serving as the data quality specialist must have a bachelor's degree or a post-secondary credential in data management. Any additional data entry staff who are overseen by the data quality specialist may be clerical staff. The division recommends that programs have additional data entry staff if possible. Beginning in program year 2018-19, programs will be required to enter all data within 14 days of the data being collected once eData is open for the year. Current staff members without the required credentials who are currently in these positions may be grandfathered for the same position for program year 2018-19. The Division of Adult Education is imposing additional requirements for teachers of mathematics at the College and Career Readiness Standards Level E. These individuals must have secondary math teaching certification or a bachelor's degree or higher that ensures knowledge of mathematics required of certified math teachers. Refer to Section 204 of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines for a link to a document listing the required knowledge. Applicants for the statewide distance learning project may apply for up to $400,000. Applicants should only apply for those funds necessary to provide the required services to the number of students it proposes to serve based on need and interest. The maximum allowable cost per contracted student is $2,000. In determining the required amount and proposed number of students, applicants should consider all possible costs associated with meeting division policies and guidelines, including assessment. Grant applications will be submitted through PDE's eGrants system. Section 3 of the Request for Grant Applications Guidelines provides details on getting access to the statewide distance learning project grant application in eGrants. In the meantime, to allow applicants to review the content of the grant application, we have posted a PDF of the grant content to the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage. Please note that the grant content document is for reference only, as the application will be submitted through eGrants. The eGrants system homepage had several user guides. In addition, we will post some grant-specific tips to the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage. The statewide distance learning project grant application will open on Wednesday, February 28, 2018. The grant application deadline is April 3rd, 2018 at 2 p.m. At that point, the eGrant system will close the grant. In order to complete the grant, all sections must be marked complete. Once all sections are marked complete, the applicant will click the Complete Step button. The eGrant system records the exact time that the applicant clicks the button. Once the grant has been successfully completed, the status will be submitted for peer review. After the grant deadline, grants will be reviewed and scored. All applications will be reviewed and scored, except those that are disqualified for one or more of the following reasons. The applicant does not meet the criteria for eligible applicant, the application is incomplete, and the application was not completed by the deadline. Review team of 3 people will review the grant applications using a scoring rubric. A summary of the scoring is in Appendix A of the Request for Grant Application Guidelines. All three sections of the grant application, the narrative, the applicant information section, and the budget will be reviewed and scored. In addition, the Pennsylvania State Workforce Board will review distance learning project grant applications for consistency with the strategies and goals of the Pennsylvania WIOA Combined State Plan. The Division of Adult Education will provide the appropriate applications and review tools to the state board after grants are submitted to the division via eGrants. Applicants should not give their applications to the state board directly. PDE will take the results of the review by the state board and any related recommendations to improve alignment into consideration when making the grant award. The statewide distance learning project grant will be awarded to the highest scoring applicant, provided it meets the minimum score of 88 points. The successful grant application will be approved for a 4-year grant cycle. Grant funds will be awarded through annual 1-year notifications of funding contingent on the availability of funds. Each year, the grantee will be required to submit a budget and a program year specific information via the eGrant system in order to receive funding. Each year's renewal option and grant amount will be based on the following criteria: contract compliance, including success in meeting contracted enrollment and providing the contracted services, evidence of sufficient progress in meeting the state-imposed performance standards, evidence of continuous program improvement, compliance with fiscal and programmatic policies and guidelines, and the amount of the federal appropriation. If the grantee fails to sufficiently address the above criteria, the contract may be terminated prior to the end of the grant cycle. PDE reserves the right to shorten or extend the 4-year grant cycle as the situation warrants. The Division of Adult Education has provided many resources to applicants. Links to the resources are on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage, which can be accessed by going to PDE's website at www.education.pa.gov. Select Instruction, then Adult Basic Education to get to the division's homepage. From the homepage, click on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions link. Applicants should review the resources both before and during the grant writing process. The resources include the Request for Grant Application Guidelines, the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines, relevant division policies, and the Pennsylvania WIOA Combined State Plan. We strongly recommend that all agencies that are considering applying for the statewide Distance Learning Project grant carefully read the Request for Grant Application Guidelines and the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines for program year 2018-19 before starting the grant application. Once you begin working on the grant in eGrants, be sure to read all of the help buttons. They are blue circles with a question mark in them next to the question. If you click on the circle, it will bring up a text box with the information in it. The help buttons provide the maximum characters allowable for the answer and include information that must be addressed in the answer. Note that the maximum characters includes spaces. Make sure that all charts and tables are complete. When composing the responses for each item in the grant application, make sure the answers address the information that is being requested. Avoid including information that is not relevant to the item. Make sure the responses are clear and concise, and do not assume that the reviewers know your program. Reviewers should not have to search the answer for the necessary information or try to interpret agency-specific terminology. Unfortunately, eGrants does not allow for any formatting, bulleted or numbered lists, or paragraphs. The system also has problems recognizing special characters. Some applicants write the content of their grant application in a Word or Pages document and then copy and paste the information into eGrants. If you choose to do this, make sure the text is plain text without any formatting before copying and pasting. This will prevent issues such as apostrophes showing up as question marks and other format conversion issues. Save often. At the bottom of each section is a Save and Continue button, which allows you to save the information that has been entered and keeps you on the same page. The Save button will save the information and take you back to the grant application detail page. The eGrant system automatically logs users out after 20 minutes of inactivity. However, the system will sometimes log you out earlier than that and while you are working on the grant application. So we suggest that you save really regularly. Every time you enter an answer, hit the save and continue button. Applicants have to provide evidence of effectiveness in 2 sections of the narrative. All applicants must provide the data themselves. The division will not do calculations on behalf of any applicants. In addition to providing quantitative data, applicants will provide a narrative explanation of the data. The information in the agency activity summary should reflect the activities that the agency proposes to provide. The table requires you to propose the number of students you will enroll in 4 different components and the dollar amount requested for each. ABE institutional, ASE-GED institutional, ABE community-based, and ASE-GED community-based. Institutional refers to services in correctional or other residential facilities that are not open to the public. ABE includes adult basic education services from beginning literacy adult basic education through high intermediate adult basic education, plus all of the ESL educational levels. ASE-GED includes services only at low and high adult secondary education levels. Before completing the budget, review sections 600 to 609 of the Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines. This covers allowable uses of funds, how to allocate allowable costs to the budget, and other fiscal requirements. Please note that in some cases, the Division of Adult Education uses the function and object codes differently than does PDE's Division of Federal Programs. Applicants must refer to the division's Adult Education and Family Literacy Guidelines when completing the budget. The successful applicant must ensure that all distance learning participants are assessed according to division policy. Therefore, the applicant must budget for related costs. WIOA has specific requirements regarding administrative costs on federally funded adult basic education grants. The Division of Adult Education uses function code 2300 for these administrative costs. Under WIOA, administrative costs are capped at 5% of the grant amount. The following costs are considered administrative costs, which means they must be charged to function code 2300. Planning costs, including the costs associated with planning and coordination with workforce system partners, the PA Career Link infrastructure costs paid from the grant, if any, and costs of contracted professional development. The cost of contracted professional development refers to funds paid to the larger agency to cover the cost of mandated agency professional development or training, and the fees paid to outside professional development providers. It does not refer to adult education staff time participating in professional development activities. It also does not refer to the work of the in-house professional development specialist and program administrators and coordinators supporting and leading staff professional development activities. Any restricted indirect costs charged to the grant are also considered administrative costs and are included in the 5% cap. WIOA allows the division to agree to, through negotiations with the local program, a higher amount when the 5% cap is too restrictive to allow for adequate planning and administration. Applicants that believe that they have a strong case for a waiver to the 5% cap should budget the expected administrative costs. The division will consider the request when successful applications are being processed. Priority for waivers will be given to costs associated with administration of the statewide distance learning project grant and coordinating with the workforce partners. This concludes the statewide distance learning project grant application webinar. If you have any questions, please submit them to our resource email address at raable@pa.gov. Again, that email address, ra-able@pa.gov. Put statewide distance learning project in the subject line. Division of Adult Education staff will periodically post responses to the submitted questions on the Division of Adult Education Grant Competitions webpage for all applicants to review. Do not send questions directly to division staff. Thank you.